Welcome to the show. This is Charlton and Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. And Charlton and Big C Sports are voted number one in the universe. We are now intergalactic, Big C, as the number one sports show in the entire galaxy, Big C. So thank you very much for that. And also we are with iHeartRadio, the number one media company in the United States. We also want to say, good old boys in Latin America, thank you, and bienvenidos. We thank you so much for following Charlton and Big C Sports. Also, you good old boys over in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and you good old boys in Canada. I think I have one more game suspension for messing up the Canadian national anthem, Big C. So, oh, Canada, I think you know it a lot better than I do, Big C. Maybe.
Home and native land, that guy in that
okay, so you already scored a higher grade than I did, Big C, and I've been practicing for a whole month, Big C. But also, you good old boys in Latin America and the great United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. In fact, it's so free, Donald Trump can say some dumb things, Big C, that he didn't know was on tape. For you good old boys that still want to vote for this character, Big C, your thoughts on Donald Trump, Big C?
well, Donald Trump, has always been a character, but his outlandish comments about females have gone over the top.
Oh, he's horrible.
He's made remarks about their size, their look,
their anatomy.
Now he's making remarks today that were on the news about sexual overtures that he has made toward these women and how aggressively he pursues them, even while he's married, Charlton. He's on his third wife. Two of them, were mail-order brides. He bought them off the internet. And so, because no American woman wanted to deal with him, his second wife, he got involved with her while he was married to his first wife. But, the tone of him today, denigrating women and how he should treat them and how he viewed them. I don't know how any woman with a conscious mind could vote for him and expect him to be a quality leader when he has no respect for them. You can talk about he's for change, he's for economic value. Donald Trump will bankrupt a business before he benefits. Before you benefit from it, Charles.
Well, we all hurt, and even if you're a woman and you love this guy, and I just want to say that this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And it's also the one that Big C's driving. We know it has a lot of mud on it, but also I think he has the one that.
Being down here in Florida, Charlton, it will not have any mud on it with all the rain we're getting.
There's a lot of rain, and our hearts and thoughts go out to all the people on the Florida coast. And make sure that you get out of town. Listen to all the emergency warnings. Your life is more important than your property, and so please take caution when you're dealing with that. And also back to the Escalade, Big C. I think you and Donald Trump are the only ones that drive the Escalade and keep it dirty, but your dirt is at least mud. Donald Trump's dirt is what he says about women, Big C. He has no respect for women. We learned that when he talked about Megyn Kelly on Fox Sports, and you still have some women, unfortunately, I don't know what part of this man they like, but they're still willing to vote for him, even though they've heard some of the vulgar things he said about them, their mothers, their grandmothers, and their daughters, Big C. Your thought on the vulgar Donald Trump, Big C?
Well, vulgarity has no place, Charlton, in the human category, as well as in the political category, even more, Charlton. And when you're running for political office as a representative of the people, you can't alienate people, Charlton. You can't discriminate against people. And he's made it his whole campaign has been based on discrimination, talking about deporting people, Charlton, and now with this expertise about women, the way he's using it. Anyone can tune into the evening news at 11 o'clock tonight or whatever and listen to what he said. Turn to CNN. This is atrocious. This is abysmal. This is embarrassing to the United States, this man's actions.
Well, Big C, you might be able to listen to it on CNN, but unfortunately, one of the stations you won't be able to listen to much is on Fox, because I don't care what station you listen to. I think they have their own propaganda, but I like listening to all of them just to get both sides of the story, Big C. But when you think about the man that wants to be commander-in-chief and what he actually says about women, about Megyn Kelly bleeding out of certain parts of her body, now he's on tape. And I know people are going to deny that he even said it, because for some reason he can say no wrong to some people, Big C, when they hear what he was saying about women and what body parts he wants to grab on. And I just think they have to understand that even if you're pro Donald Trump, if you're pro Republican, explain to your daughter why she means nothing, Explain to your grandparents why they mean nothing in the eye of a bigot person who's also sexist, and you still want to make this guy commander-in-chief, let alone, stop and frisk Big C. That's a code for stopping black Americans. But what he's saying is egregious to even white women, Big C. And if they still want to vote for him, God bless him.
He was just straight up talking about molesting women that he ran into if they were beautiful and somebody he desired. All he was saying, he was going to molest them.
Yeah.
This is straight up what he said. He was going to physically molest somebody.
Yeah.
And, how can you stand for a person who represents himself in that way to want him to represent you on a world stage? Because
some people have low self-esteem, Big C. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And this might be painful, but a lot of people just don't read, Big C. A lot of people they can Google it, but they don't read books. They don't read the newspapers. They just listen to whatever station. And unfortunately, if they're only stuck on Sean Hannity and Fox Sports, they're only going to get one side of the story. Those guys are so horrible. They're so egregious. But they managed to stay on the air anyway. I guess Rupert Murdoch owns that station. What a joke of a news station, but they're on there anyway, so there's always a room for dumb people to watch television. And unfortunately, they've captured the Neanderthal thinking and the intellectually vapid audiences of America, Big C. I just want to say that Donald Trump is a man that actually owns sports teams. He kind of ran the USFL out of business. He owned the New Jersey Generals. He tried to buy the Buffalo Bills, but the good old boys in the NFL, they locked him out of it because they know his bigotry is real. He and Rush Limbaugh, I guess they will always have an audience, though, Big C. But speaking of an audience, as we close out on Donald Trump, we have a lot of sports to cover. Man, there's so much happening. The world of baseball, Big C. And I know you can't wait for Alabama football over the weekend. Even though the playoffs are on, you guys consider that a nuisance. But just your thoughts on Toronto whipping up on the good old boys in Texas. We have Boston and Cleveland going at it. The Dodgers, your favorite team, Big C, they're playing Washington. And the Giants might pick to win the World Series. They're playing the Cubs tonight. Your thoughts on Major League Baseball, Big C?
Well, last night was a home run derby by Toronto in Texas. I mean, they hit everything that was thrown to them out of the park. It was an amazing feat. The bats of Toronto last night, Charlton, but also the Cleveland Indians put on a display last night.
Yeah.
Taking down the Boston. And Boston had been hot and favored in this series, but there's something in the air in Cleveland this year. The Cavaliers won the NBA title.
Yeah.
Now the Indians are playing well here in the playoffs in baseball. So it's just going to be a marvelous time. I mean, the people in Chicago right now are really worried about the Giants, Charlton.
Yeah.
They came in hot off of beating the Mets. This was a team that they were worried about. You have 108 wins during the regular season, which really mean nothing.
Yeah, it means nothing now.
A couple years ago when the Patriots went undefeated in the preseason.
Yeah.
I mean the regular season.
Yeah.
But they lost the Super Bowl to the Giants.
Yeah.
So that undefeated season was really like no season in reality, even though it was one of the greatest seasons in pro football history. They lost the final game. They went 19-1 instead of 20-0, Charlton.
Yeah.
And the Cubs are facing that same scenario with the Giants. You win 108 in the regular season, but the ones that count are the 11 in the postseason. Yeah,
and you talk about the Cubs. They're starting John Lester. He's 19-5 on the season, going against Johnny Cueto, who's 18-5. Cueto's he's a stud on the mound. Guy has a lot of attitude, can bring it. If he gets into his zone, that's going to be a really tough out for the Cubs. So great game. I know.
Charlton, you think about it. Cueto was a World Series winner last year in Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City.
So this is the third consecutive year he's been in the World Series representing a team if the Giants make it.
Yeah, that's true. And you have the Dodgers. They have Clayton Kershaw, who's a great Cy Young type of candidate every single year, Big C. He's only 12-4 because he was injured throughout the season. But also he's going against Max Scherzer, who's 20-7, and that game is on Fox Sports 1. But I'm telling you, something about this time of year, it makes baseball great. Even when you have knuckleheads like Donald Trump and trying to be the commander-in-chief, you have a great sports show like Charlton and Big C Sports, ranked number 1 in the universe. And I'm counting on you good old boys with all the votes, Big C. I take it there are no hanging chats coming up later. But I tell you, we talk about sports like nobody else does. I'm really excited about the game of baseball, and we'll just have to see who wins out in these division series, Big C, coming up. But what I also love is that college football has a lot of action happening also this week. And I just want to see your thought on some of the bigger games that you're looking forward to seeing. And I get into a little social topic after that, Big C. But just some of the games you're looking at seeing, I think, in the Pac-12, Colorado They look like they're back. The Washington Huskies, they look like they're back. They're strong. We know that USC, even though they got off to a bad start, being cheated by you good old boys. The USC, yeah, they found the playbook. Oh yeah, they found that playbook that one of the good old boy coaches took down there to Nick Saban. But the SEC has a lot of good games coming up this week. I know Miami and Florida State. That game, because of the weather, I don't know if they've announced it, if they're going to move it to a different spot. But just your thoughts on what's happening this week in college football, Big C.
Well, Charlton, I like the A&M Tennessee game, the Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So, Tennessee has been real lucky. You know, they won in front of the largest crowd in college football history down at Bristol Motor Speedway.
Oh, yeah.
They won a game being behind by 21. They won a game on the Hail Mary last week. This is a team, it's either of destiny or it's of luck. Okay?
Yeah.
They come from behind in all but one of their games this year, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is a true test this week against A&M, who has been dominant this early part of the season. Both teams are undefeated. So, you know, it's going to be very interesting what happens in that game.
Well,
but, you know, when you look across the slate, you got number 1 Alabama playing. You know, they will always dominate people, Charlton. It's just such a solid program. You got Clemson playing tonight against Boston College. They came off that epic win last week against Louisville.
Yeah.
You know, this is a tremendous game.
I tell you also, you have Southern Methodist. They're 2-3 at Tulsa, 3-1 tonight. Number 19, Boise State, is 4-0. They're at New Mexico, 2-2. If Boise State played in the Pac-12, I'm sure they wouldn't have the same national rankings that they have week after week.
They beat Pac-12 teams.
They do beat Pac-12 teams, every time they play them.
They're not scared of that conference.
Yeah, but they line them up like once a year, it seems. But they are very good. I would love to see them be that Cinderella team that they always are, Big C. And you have Cincinnati at Connecticut tomorrow. Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River Shootout. That's a game where Charlie Strong is amazing. They talk about Charlie Strong in his second year being in trouble, but most coaches get about 3 years because they have most players at least 3 to 4 years.
Well, when you're a black coach, Charlie, you get
so they accelerate the trouble is what you're trying to say, Big C. But give the man 3 years to at least get his recruits in. At least let him get junior recruits into Texas. They gave Mac Brown a lot of years, Big C. He didn't win right away. I think Charlie Strong is a great character. But just my thinking, maybe that good old boy pressure down south, they're not being realistic. I know some of them went through the same kind of pressure, Big C. And here he has Texas A&M ranked in the top 10 because they gave him some time and they backed him. But this game with Stoops against Stubbs, Oklahoma and Texas, could it be unrealistic to say that the guy that loses this game would be looking for a job, Big C?
No, Charlton, you're right on point with that. The loser of the Red River rivalry this year will be without a job come the end of the season, guaranteed. You know, they're not going to sit there, either one of these organizations, these schools, and with their alumni base and you know, the boosters who run programs down in that conference in the Big 12 going to sit around and let a team have 3 losses this early in the season. They're going to say that the problem is the coach.
Yeah.
You know, what has happened so much, Charlton, with college players over the decades is that, you know, when you reduce the scholarships at these universities, there became equality.
Yeah.
If you think about 20, 30 years ago, University of Texas, University of Oklahoma would have dressed 150 players for this game.
Yeah.
They would have had duplicate numbers all up and down the sideline. In those type of scenarios, Charlton, that no longer exists. So when everybody can go out and pull from that talent pool now, even the small schools have great players, Charlton. All you have to do is witness the NFL draft with Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
You know, number 2 draft pick out of the division.
Unfortunately, I still don't think Carson Wentz is all that great, and I'm going to go against the current when I say that, Big C. He's played in 3 games. One of those games against Cleveland, another game against Chicago. They got the lucky win against Pittsburgh. I'm not saying he can't be a good quarterback, but to canonize this guy as a saint right away, let's talk about how great Carson Wentz is. Well, we're at the 8-game mark, and I think you're going to see more defenses shut down on him. But he does have a great defense, and even with that defense, BC, with that defense, you would look good right now playing against with the defense that they have at Philadelphia, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Charlton, I look sexy regardless. You know,
okay.
I don't look good. You know, I can get in my Speedo and walk around and not care what people think. Okay?
They don't.
In my mind, I'm always looking good.
Well, when they don't know that Big C walks around in mud the way Lester Hayes has stick him on his hands, Big C, it's funny how that thing happens down south, Big C. Go right ahead, Big C.
But when you look at Philadelphia defense, Charlton, they do have the top defense in football. But you look at their offense also.
Yeah.
Their receivers have the best run after catch percentage in the NFL right now, okay?
Yeah.
So that has made it.
But that's not Carson Wentz. That's not Carson Wentz, Big C. That's guys running.
It's his receiving core,
Yeah.
Charlton.
Yeah.
These guys have gone out and done a great job. He doesn't really have a running game.
Yeah.
But his receivers, after they catch these short passes, are extending the play.
Yeah.
And that's what they're not getting credit for. Carson Wentz is getting all the credit that he's doing a marvelous job, and no one is looking at the receiving core on this team that has done an excellent job. Look at Darren Sproles. I mean, this guy catch a 7-yard pass, and he's got a 60-yard touchdown.
A 60-yard touchdown,
so, but Carson Wentz gets credit for a 60-yard touchdown throw.
Yeah, and
so it's a little misleading early.
Yeah.
There was no preseason tape on him, so teams really didn't get a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
Now that he's getting to his 4th game, it's like having 3 preseason games of tape. Teams can prepare for what he's doing.
Yeah.
And you'll see a big change in Philadelphia, how effective their offense is going forward, Charles.
Yeah, and we'll get back into a little bit more NFL football after we talk about college football. I just want to say that this segment is sponsored by your California Lottery, home of the California Lottery winners, Charlton and Big C Sports. I'm hoping, Big C, because, you know, I went to church a while back, Big C, and I listen to church on TV when I don't have time to get there, and I listen to guys like Creflo Dollar and Joel Osteen and T.D. Jakes and Fred Price and all these guys that talk about praying and God's going to give you what you want. So I took my lotto ticket into the church, and I asked the pastor to pray on it, and the pastor asked me if I give him 10% even before I won, Big C, but the bug can do a lot of things for you, Big C. Your thoughts on the lottery, Big C?
Well, the lottery has brought a great wealth to all the states, Charlton, because the education system benefits from it. And so, you know, use it wisely. Don't just throw a lot of money into it, Charlton.
Yeah.
Play wisely when you're making your bets in the lottery, because your life still goes on whether you win or not.
And when you get that lottery, make sure you tell your pastor after you talk to your attorney. Make sure you do that, because they got their hands on everything, Big C. Also, back to the world of college football, we talked about Texas and Oklahoma and the Red River Shootout, and that game actually has Texas favored by 10.5. They were also favored last year, Big C, and Texas, actually no, Oklahoma's actually the favorite. Beg your pardon. Oklahoma's favored by 10.5. They were also favored last year, and Texas found a way to win that game. Another solid game coming up. Another coach that might be on the hot seat. You know, Jesus fires people too. The guy at Notre Dame, you know, they're right now having a tough season. They're 2-3.
Brian Kelly.
Kelly's in trouble right now at Notre Dame, 2-3. They're playing on the road at North Carolina State, which is 3-1. Don't even take for granted that Notre Dame doesn't fire coaches. We know what happened to Charlie Wise. They even got rid of the great Lou Holtz, and he won a national championship. How is Kelly going to fare?
A coach long before your time, South.
Yeah.
South.
Yeah.
You know, who was one of the greatest high school coaches of all time in Akron.
Yeah.
Took the job to Notre Dame, but could not take his high school rah-rah to success in the college level. He didn't last long at Notre Dame. So they do have turnover at Notre Dame, and South was there before Lou Holtz. So, you know, it's a school that wants to win, Charlton.
Yeah, they do want to win. And would you believe that North Carolina State is favored by 2.5 against the great Notre Dame? I think that's a Las Vegas pick. I'm going to take Notre Dame to win that out straight right, Big C. But, you know, Las Vegas has something on the games that we don't always know about. In your neck of the woods, you have Auburn 3-2. They're at Mississippi State 2-2. And Mississippi State, right now, that's a team that can surprise people. But they have Auburn by 3 in that game. Down in your neck of the woods, your thoughts on that game, Big C?
Well, you know, I kind of like Mississippi State in this game. You know, Auburn, you know, beat LSU a couple of weeks ago, which cost, you know, Les Miles' job.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was an emotional game. Mississippi State, Dan Mullen lost his first game of the season, unfortunately, but he seems to have his team back on track now. You know, and he's had a solid program. This is where Zach Prescott, the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, came from. So he's produced some quality players. And also Dan Mullen, when Tim Tebow won the Heisman Trophy, he was his offensive coordinator at the University of Florida.
Yeah, that's true, Big C. And when you look at that game also, when the point spreads are just people talking, but they do have, we talked about Auburn being favored by 3 in that game. Another game coming up as a big game, probably the game of the week for college football. You have number 9 Tennessee there at 5-0. There at number 7 Texas A&M, 2 teams in the SEC. That's a 3:30 game on CBS. And Texas A&M is favored by 6.5. Now, Tennessee, they've been living on luck, Big C, but they've gotten some lucky wins lately. I think Texas A&M at Kyle Field in Texas might be too much for luck to win out this time. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, you know, this is 2 teams, Charlton, that are used to playing in front of enormous crowds of 100,000 plus every home game. You know, I like Texas A&M, very solid. They got a great pass rush.
Yeah.
Tennessee is also going to be without their top back here in this game, so that's going to make a difference as far as ground control. You know, you're asking a lot from your quarterback of Tennessee in this game as far as running the ball.
Yeah.
But I think Texas A&M defense is going to be too much for Dobbs this week, and Tennessee's luck will run out.
Well, speaking of luck running out, you know, I know there's one team I can ask about, and I don't even have to find out who they're playing. They could be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you'll probably still pull for this team. The University of Alabama, your good old friends, the Nick Saban and his good old boys, ranked number 1 in the country, and they also are 5-0. They're playing at number 17 Arkansas, which is 4-1. That game's 7 o'clock on ESPN Eastern Standard Time. Now, the Tide are favored by 14. That's a lot of points to go into Arkansas and win by 14. Is that a Vegas game, Big C? But I know you're going to go for Alabama. Your thoughts on that game?
Well, if you think about it, Alabama only beat them by a point last year, Charlton, off a missed extra point. Now, you look at this game, you got two animals that love to waddle in the mud, you know, some of my favorite things. You got hogs who like to waddle in the mud, and you got elephants.
Let me ask you this question, Big C. What is it about pigs? See, I'm out here in California. People even wash their pigs out here. But what is it about pigs that want to lay down in the mud? Isn't that filthy? And then we eat the bacon, Big C? How do you guys do that, Big C?
You know, one of the greatest pieces of meat ever, Charlton. Bacon, ribs.
Yeah.
Man, I'm telling you, that's called living high on the hog. Okay. But I think the big mud waddler this week will handle the smaller mud waddler. So I'm going to go with the Tide on this game, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're due for a breakout game. They've been sluggish in their past couple of games offensively.
Yeah.
And it's time for them just to unleash the Tide and do a little rolling.
Well, another thing about unleashing the Tide, Big C, the number 6 Washington Huskies, Donnie James' old team out here in the great Northwest up in Seattle. They're number 6 in the country. They are actually 5-0 on the season. They're at Oregon, the Pac-10 champion over the past several years. But Oregon's only 2-3. They've always challenged Stanford. Now there's a new kid on the block. They just knocked off Stanford. Now they're looking to knock off Oregon at Austin Stadium. That's a 7:30 p.m. game on Fox. And they have Washington by 9 in Oregon. Have you ever heard of such thing, Big C?
Well, Charlton, it's been a long time since Washington's been favored by those numbers up there since the early 90s. You know, Billy Joe Hobart was the quarterback in Washington.
Oh, yeah, out of Puyallup, Washington.
Advantage over Oregon.
Yeah.
But Oregon's team has struggled. And, you know, when you watch Washington against Stanford, you saw the difference in that team, Charlton, than what it was under Sarkisian. This is a team built on speed now.
Yeah.
And that's what Oregon's history was over the past decade, speed. That speed has migrated a little bit north now. And
yeah.
You have to be amazed with the athleticism that Peterson has put together in that organization and brought Washington back to national prominence that they used to have back in the early 80s and 90s. So.
Yeah, you're right, Big C. That's great. And also, this segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed $100,000 life insurance with no medical questions. And we are also endorsed by the American Cancer Society and the American Heart Association. Tweet out the Charlton and Big C Sports if you're looking for work. We're also looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers to go to work for Charlton and Big C Sports. And if you've been turned down by any insurance company, tweet out the Charlton and Big C Sports to get a quote on life insurance. Big C also in the world of college football. And again, my heart and thought goes out to the people in Florida, especially South Florida, on the Florida coast by the Atlantic Ocean with the hurricane coming through there. I think there's been about 1 million people displaced. What are any update that you have on number 21 Florida State, 3-2 on the season, at number 10 Miami, which is 4-0. That game's at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on ABC Sports. Miami's favored by 3, but there's a lot more important things going on in that part of the country, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you know, this is a game that there's been some talk about moving that game to a later date, Charlton. But, you know, Miami and Florida State, this was a rivalry that you know, everybody loved back in the 90s with Bobby Bowden, Jimmy Johnson, you know, Butch Davis. It was always wide right, you know, with the kickers at Florida State.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, now that Florida State is down a little bit, Mark Richt has left the University of Georgia and come back to his alma mater at the University of Miami, where he played linebacker years ago, Charlton. But he has his team 5-0. Greg Kaya, his quarterback, one of those California kids that have migrated east, is doing a wonderful job. But what Rick has done more than anything else is elevated the running game at the University of Miami. If you think about the running backs he had at the University of Georgia, Todd Gurley, Marshall, Chubb, he has that same type of running attack down in Miami, which has made a difference. and made the game easier for Kaya to see. And this offense has just been explosive this year.
Yeah.
I like Miami in this game.
That's a great, good pick, Big C. And I hope everybody's safe back on the East Coast. Of course, football will take your mind off of things, but there are a lot of people who need a lot of help out there, Big C. We have on the West Coast, California, Berkeley, 3-2 at Oregon State. They're 1-3. Arizona's 2-3. They're at number 24, Utah, 4-1. Utah State's playing at Colorado State. And then Washington State is at number 15, Stanford, 3-1. Stanford has to get back on track. Last game for college football, Big C. And there's a lot of black college football sports going on, too. ESPN's covering some of those games. So keep an eye out for that down in the South. But we have UCLA 3-2 at Arizona State, 4-1. That game's at 10:30 Eastern Time on ESPN2. And they have UCLA favored by 10. But that game's at Arizona State, Big C, down in the desert in Tempe. I think that's a lot of points to give them a favorite by 10.5. Your thoughts on UCLA going in to handle Arizona State that's 4-1 on the season, Big C?
You know, Rosen had a wonderful freshman season, but he hasn't been the same quarterback here in his sophomore year, even though it's been good.
Yeah.
You know, UCLA with 2 losses already on the season to Stanford and to Texas A&M. Arizona State has showed explosive points throughout this early part of the season, Charlton. They can score points. And being down there in the desert, down in Tempe, the temperature will be a little hotter than what it is in California. Even though it's warm in California, you might have a 90-degree night down there in Tempe, which will wear on the players, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
So I like Arizona State at home in this game, 4-1, moving to 5-1.
Well, that should be a great game down there in the Pac-12 Big C. And now as we transition into the world of the NFL, I know this is a favorite time of year for you. We do have some basketball starting up in the preseason. We have baseball in full swing.
Who cares about basketball?
Yeah, I understand, Big C. Well,
you running up and down the court in shorts. Somebody might hear about that.
I understand, Big C, but we'll have to cover it anyway because the games are already scheduled, Big C. But I want to get into NFL Week 5 previews. And, you know, I think when I think about Tom Brady was one of our first interviews back in 1998 on Sports Talk USA. He's still bringing it. Now, the Patriots are 3-1. They were shut out last week by the Buffalo Bills. They're at Cleveland, which is 0-4. But would you believe Cleveland's played them tough every time they played? That game Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on CBS Sports. Greg Gumbel, Trent Green, and Jamie Yordahl have that game. The Patriots are favored by 10.5. I think that's too much, though, on the road, Big C. Your thoughts on that game? Your thoughts on that game, Big C? I think we have a little bit of trouble with Big C, but we'll try to get it back on the line. I know, again, they're having some trouble with the storms down in the southeast, and I know everybody's affected by it, but hopefully we'll get Big C back on the line. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the whole world of sports, we always want to make sure that everybody's safe. And in the world of sports, we got to make sure that as we're dealing with weather, we do this sports talk show every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide on Charlton and Big C Sports. But even on live radio, you can have some technical difficulties because of the weather. So I know that everything is happening that we all have some control over, but not control over everything. So we'll take a little bit of break and come right back after this timeout to make sure that everything is great with our communications coming in from the Southeast. And every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you can listen to Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeart Radio Network. We thank you, we appreciate you, and we'll be right back after the break. All right, we have Big C back on the line. That's thunder and lightning going on, but it's actually happening down in the southeast. But we've got Big C back on the line, so I'm glad everything's well with you, Big C. Again, we were talking about Tom Brady, the Patriots favorite by 10.5 going into Cleveland. Is that too many points for a guy who hasn't played in the first 4 weeks, Big C?
Well, you know, he hasn't played in the first 4 weeks. He spent some time in the Riviera being naked on the bench, on the beach. So,
yeah.
You know, his body's in great shape. You know, he's got a good tan going.
I heard he had a nude bathing suit, Big C. I don't think he was naked, Big C.
Well, you know, he's out there free balling it.
Oh, okay, I understand.
You know? But, you know, you look at Tom Brady. When he looks at the Cleveland Brown defenses, he's going to see 11 Roger Goodells out there, okay?
Yeah.
He's out to prove a point this week that you can come after me, but you can't stop me.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a tough situation for the Browns defense. They have a good young organization. They're getting better week after week under Coach Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
But I think Brady's just going to be too much. He's going to have a cross to bear. this week, and he's going to come out with a vengeance against the NFL, and the Browns just happen to be the people standing in his way, Charlton.
Well, Big C, Tom Brady, he's such a consummate professional. Played at Sarah High School out here in Northern California in the Bay Area, in San Mateo, then went on to the University of Michigan, and we know the story since he's been playing with the New England Patriots. Philadelphia 3-0. They're at Detroit 1-3. That game's in the Dome on Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox with Tom Brennan, Charles Davis, and Chris Spielman, as well as Pat Shager doing the game. And the Eagles are favored by 3.5. That's a game they could drop being in the Dome, and they've also had a week off. But I'm telling you, the Lions may not be as bad as they think, as easy as bad as they've looked, Big C. Maybe Stafford gets on track in this game, Big C.
Well, this is a game that the Lions sorely need. They're going to have to come with it defensively. They have a decent receiving core. Matthew Stafford has been inconsistent. He's been like Matt Ryan had been early part of the season, but maybe he'll catch that Matt Ryan moment.
Yeah.
When Ryan threw for 500 yards last week.
Yeah.
Maybe Matthew Stafford can find his receivers on a consistent basis. But this will be a tough match for the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz hasn't had 2 weeks off before.
Yeah.
But now he's going to have that, and so it's going to be a real challenge to see how he really handles the professional game and scheduling, Charles.
Yeah, Big C. And speaking of professional games and scheduling, the Chicago Bears, the erstwhile monsters of the Midway, 1-3. They're at Indianapolis with Andrew Unso Lucky lately. They're 1-3 also. That game is Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox. They have Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, and Aaron Andrews doing that game. The Colts are by 5. Why do they pick Fox #1 team to cover two teams that are 2-6 combined, Big C? That's a little bit ironic. What's going on there, Big C?
Well, I think the true story is, Charlton, all the controversy with the GM of the Indianapolis Colts talking about with his contract that he's given Andrew Luck is not going to allow him to build a defense. Now, Charlton, you think about the statement he made. Luck just signed that contract this year for 4 years. He was under a rookie contract. It was only $24 million, okay?
Yeah.
For 4 years, he played under that contract. For 4 years, he never dedicated the draft to building a defense because he knew he was going to have to give Luck this money come his 5th year.
Yeah.
And they gave him the $144 million. Now there's no money left to build a defense.
Yeah.
So this GM made a stupid statement in saying because he gave Luck this contract, he doesn't have the money to build a defense. Where the hell was he for the last 4 years?
Maybe he was sipping on some of that moonshine or too much Oxycontin.
I'll tell you where he was. He was hanging out with Ursula Owen.
Okay.
With all that Oxycontin riding around in the front seat of the car when the troopers pulled him over to Indianapolis.
Oh, the troopers pulled him over? How could the troopers pull him over if he didn't go to jail, Big C? I don't understand what happened.
Well, you got $27,000 in Oxycontin in the front seat of your car. You're inebriated when they take you out. You can hardly walk. You're staggering all over the place.
Yeah.
But you were not under an illegal substance. You were not, you were not intoxicated.
Yeah.
You were not convicted. That's called white justice. He was taking white pills. He got white justice.
So you're saying Donald Trump, his stop and frisk would have let the good old boys go? Is that what you're saying, Big C?
Would have let him go. Grabbing a woman, molesting a woman in public is acceptable in that race.
Yeah, think about it. Donald Trump, who's been accosting women, who's just the piggest person. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. Here's a guy that wants to implement an unconstitutional law called stop and frisk. And here he is stopping and frisking every woman he can get his eyes close to. Big C. Just about what a crazy world we live in. But also back to the NFL, the Tennessee Titans, they're 1-3. They're at the Miami Dolphins. If that game is going to be played in Miami, they're both 1-3. That game is Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on CBS Sports. And that game is by Andrew Catalan, Steve Tasker, and Steve Berline, Big C. And they have the Dolphins favored by 4. I know they have a lot more things going on in the game, but if that game is played, your thoughts on Tennessee at Miami, Big C?
Well, I don't know how you can favor the Dolphins, Charlton, against anybody. This has been a lackluster offense to start the season. They have showed no motivation, no consistent ability to move the football.
Yeah.
And that's the trouble. Even though Tennessee hasn't gotten on track, I would like Tennessee in this game against the Dolphins. Tannehill is just struggled this season.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you say the same thing I see, Big C, but so we'll have to see what happens if they even play that game, Big C. We also have the Washington Redskins 2-2. They're at Baltimore Ravens 3-1, and the Ravens had a heartbreaking loss to the Raiders just last Sunday. That game is Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Fox. Kenny Albert, Daryl Johnson, and Laura Oakman are doing that game. They have the Ravens favored by 4. And I'm telling you, that passing game by the Ravens, it actually looks pretty decent because they have no running game, Big C. Your thoughts on that game?
Well, this is the battle of the Beltway, Charlton, when you look at it. The guy 95. Washington, They're 2-2.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it. They've had inconsistent play at quarterback.
Yeah.
But I like what Joe Flacco has done. The defensive secondary in Washington has been riddled a little bit this year. They've been taking advantage of it. They got very lucky in the 2 games that they won. They could have easily lost them, to Dallas and the Giants.
Charlton. Yeah. And when you think, go ahead, Big C.
But I like Joe Flacco in this game. Steve Smith is a beast at home.
Oh, he's a stud.
Without a running game, Joe Flacco can still get it done through the air.
Well, speaking of getting it done through the air, the Houston Texans with Osweiler, they're 3-1. They're at the Minnesota Vikings, who are 4-0, and they look like an NFC contender right now. That game's Sunday, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on CBS. And Spiro Davies and Solomon Wilcox. I love Solomon Wilcox's broadcast, and they're doing the broadcast. The Vikings are favored by 7, and again, they're doing this without having Bridgewater. There's no Peterson. And then the Texans, they're without J.J. Watt. He has a back issue. Your thoughts on this game? I think Osweiler is highly overrated, Big C, but he's still getting that $72 million, Big C. They're not going to give away that $72 million to anybody else, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you can't run on this Vikings defense. Remember, they won the division last year with 11 victories. They're 4-0 this year. They've already beat division opponents also. And if you can't run, then you're forced to just pass.
Yeah.
So that makes it very easy for the secondary to be ready for Osweiler. He's looked lackluster in a couple games. If we go back to the game against New England, where they knew he had no running game and he was forced to throw the ball all the time. Minnesota will be all over him with the blitz. It's going to be a very tough day for Osweiler. This is where they will find out if he was truly worth that $75 million that they gave him, Charlton.
I think his biggest thing is that he had the chance to ride behind a great defense in Denver. That defense is not as good in Houston. Another game that has a lot of spotlight on it up in the Northwest, actually in the Northeast, you have the New York Jets at 1-3. They're at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think will find a way to at least get to the AFC Championship game. They're 3-1. That game is Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on CBS Sports with Iron Eagle, Dan Fouts, and then even Washburn doing the reporting. The Steelers are favored by 3. I think the Steelers might win it by more than 3, Big C, especially if they give Roethlisberger some time. Your thoughts on that game, Big C?
Well, Charlton, I look at Ryan Fitzpatrick right now. In the last 2 games, he's been averaging an interception a quarter.
Yeah.
You can't win in the NFL and interceptions in 2 games. You got 3 backup quarterbacks on the roster. They drafted Hackenberg this year. They had Geno Smith there already, as well as Russell from Baylor.
Yeah.
At what point do you decide you're going to make a change? You're 1-3. Todd Bowles' job is on the line.
Yeah.
His management is going to give him an opportunity to make a change at quarterback to see what the Jets have. If these guys are not NFL quarterbacks, why do you have them on the roster?
Yeah.
Even though they're in a backup role, at some point you have to make a decision to play somebody, Charlton. You just can't sit around and say, hey, we're going to keep him here in a backup role. Same type of scenario with Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco.
Yeah. Big C, this is a question too. I just want to divert a little bit to this thing about Colin Kaepernick. And because watching the game last night, and I don't care who you like, and I love sports, but I know as part of someone who watches sports, I'm not really particular. I'm not partial to any team. I do love seeing West Coast teams win because it's just part of seeing the environment for the cities here on the West Coast. But if anyone can tell me that was talking about Gabbert being the 49ers' chosen one, I heard it from the NFL Network. I heard it from Fox Sports. I heard it from ESPN. I even heard it from one of the announcers last night. Ironically, played for the New York Giants during their heyday. Phil Simms, of all people, who has a Super Bowl ring. He's saying that this kid and Gabbert is the guy that they need to lead the 49ers. I'm thinking, how much moonshine did Phil Simms drink before that game with Jim Nantz? Because if anyone, even high school kids are saying, if the guy is not getting it done, at least bring in the other guys off the bench, at least for a couple of series, Big C. But Kelly, for some reason, is so... I really think he's looking for the USC job, Big C. I think he's not trying to win, even if it's coming from management or from Coach Kelly. But if you're a 49er fan and you're spending between $100 and $1,000 a ticket, and your coach is not even trying to give the team the best chance to win, why are you going? You can stay home and watch it on TV. I just think Kelly's making a big mistake, or maybe there's forces higher than him that are saying, we don't want this social consciousness. We want people to just not even talk about it. Who cares what happens with Black Lives Matter? Let's just focus on losing football games. Your thought, Big C.
Well, Kelly is looking at Jim Thomasula said he made $14.7 million on a one-year
We're getting out of here, yeah.
And he benched Colin Kaepernick. Maybe I can do the same thing.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, and I've heard a lot of the Bay Area media and other media talking about, well, he's just not ready because of the 3 surgeries. Now, and I had a thought, Charlton. I'm not the smartest man in the world.
Okay.
But, I do think about things periodically. And I went back in my mental archives, and I thought that he played the last preseason game of the season for the 49ers. I think they played San Diego or something like that.
He looked great.
Yeah. And in that game, he led the team to a victory. Matter of fact, statistically, his statistics in that game against the Chargers, and he was playing against starters, were better than any game that Gabbert has had this season in the regular season, Charlton. So if he wasn't ready, how was he able to perform at such a high level against the San Diego Chargers in the final preseason game? And ever since then, Blaine Gabbert has gone downhill. Yes, he won the one game this year, which gave him 8 victories on his career. Okay? Now, Tim Tebow, Charlton, only played part of a season in his rookie year in Denver.
Oh, yeah.
He had 8 consecutive victories. 8 led them to a playoff win over the Pittsburgh Steelers, Charlton. But Tim Tebow is not a quality quarterback. Tim Tebow's professional career equaled in 1 year what Blaine Gabbert's professional career has equaled in 5, Charlton.
Well, see, and that's the same thing. And I'm just going to say this. Had Blaine Gabbert been someone who's African American, he would have been benched a long time ago because he would have been cut from the team.
He wouldn't have been benched. He'd been cut.
I heard a knucklehead person that works in the Bay Area media saying that they should just cut Colin Kaepernick because he's a distraction to the team. Because here's another ignorant person, right? That's saying someone who's intelligent is a distraction to the team, Big C.
It's like when they talk about Odell Beckham being a distraction to the New York Giants.
Yeah.
What stupid broadcast company dedicates 3 cameras a game to him on the sideline, okay?
Yeah.
Not Odell Beckham. He doesn't have a contract to dedicate 3 cameras to him on the sideline. It's the stupid broadcast company, Charlton, that are dedicating 3 cameras to Odell Beckham, making it a clown show with Odell Beckham. Yes, he's playing into it, but the broadcast company is making it a clown show. They're making Odell Beckham bigger than the broadcast. Colin Kaepernick hasn't said a word.
No, not at all.
He has sit there quietly. He has held the clipboard. He has assisted in the offense.
Well,
but Colin Kaepernick is doing a professional job. The media is mad because Colin Kaepernick wants to come to their tirade. Yeah,
well, see, unfortunately, I even heard someone saying, why is he growing his hair into an afro, Big C, as if only one hairstyle can exist for...
Charles, does anybody say anything about Clay Matthews with his flowing golden locks in Green Bay? Down his back? Or any other white player with long hair?
No.
Or even curly hair? They say nothing about that. I remember years ago, John Riggins, Charlton, wore an afro in protest when he was a running back with the Jets. Then he cut it into a mohawk. They traded into the Redskins. But he was also Native American.
Native American.
And he got backlash about that because he wouldn't conform to white media's thoughts looking a certain way, Charlton.
Well, there are people who are saying, shouldn't they just cut this guy and get rid of him? And they're not talking about cutting the guy that's led them to, 1 win and 4 games in his whole career. He's only won 8 games. And it's not fair to blame Gabbert, number 1, Big C, because he's not good enough to help this team go any further. But I still wonder where are all these talking heads that were saying that he's a leader and he's the guy that should be given the starting job. You don't hear them coming out saying they were wrong, Big C. They just keep saying, well, maybe they need better offensive line play. Well, Colin Kaepernick had surgery.
It's like Indianapolis, Charlton, with Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
It's everybody's fault except for Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
In San Francisco, it's everybody's fault except for Blaine Gabbert. At some point, the quarterback is inept.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the ability to produce. Blaine Gabbert has proven that throughout his professional career. He's been inept. He doesn't have the ability to produce. 10 years ago in the NFL, Charlton, he would have been cut, regardless of his status in the draft. He would have been cut. But now through this media thing and this love affair and this hatred for Colin Kaepernick, they're stuck. They would rather lose.
They'd rather lose with a white guy.
Come in and turn around this organization.
They'd rather lose with a white guy than win with a guy who took them to their last Super Bowl, Big C, since Steve Young and Joe Montana did it. And if you don't see that writing on the wall, I mean, you got to examine what's going on with you in the inside. Also, this second,
look at it from this perspective.
If
they're playing for the number 1 pick in the draft, and they will be doing that as long as they play Blaine Gabbert. Deshaun Watson's a black quarterback.
Yeah.
They're going to draft another black quarterback?
Probably not. Probably not. They'll probably get a guy out of North Dakota that no one knows who he is right now, Big C, because it seems apparent that they just want certain pigmentation calling plays for them. And speaking of calling plays, this segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance, your leaders when it comes to final expense. Tweet out the Charlton and Big C Sports. We're also looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers to put people back to work. Again, Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you live on the iHeart Radio Network, the #1 sports program in the universe, according to Big C, and they're voting. You guys use Nielsen ratings, Big C? Or do you have good old boys that are trying to tag satellites, Big C? Which one is it, Big C?
well, Charlton, what we do is put cans up on the fence and we knock them down, with whatever apparatus we need to use.
Yeah, well, a lot of things I hear you talk about, I hear it repeated on ESPN and Fox Sports, so I believe the good old boys are right. Also, back to the NFL, I think the game of the week coming up, you have the Atlanta Falcons. They're 3-1 on the season at the Denver Broncos, 4-0 on the season. That game is Sunday, 4:05 p.m. on Fox Eastern Standard Time. Chris Myers, John Lynch, and Pam Oliver working that game. I remember the first time I met Pam Oliver, it was in San Francisco. We were all in the lunchroom. When Pam Oliver walked out of the production truck into the lunchroom, everybody stopped. It was like E.F. Hutton. When Pam Oliver walked in, everybody stopped and listened, Big C. But that game has the Broncos by 6. I'm looking at a guy like Ryan who's passed for 503 yards and 300 yards to wide receiver Julio Jones in a 48-33 win over the Carolina Panthers. I'm asking you your thoughts on Ryan. Can he do the same thing in Mile High Stadium with the #1 defense, I think, at least in the AFC, Big C?
Well, I don't know if he can duplicate that feat, Charles. That was a historical performance.
Yeah.
But when you look at Denver's defense and you look at Atlanta's defense, they gave up 33 points to Carolina last week, okay?
Yeah.
Denver's only given up twice that many points all season in combination.
Yeah.
So their defense is lights out. Ryan has not faced a pass rush like he's going to face this week in Denver.
Yeah.
And Julio Jones has an aggressive secondary. Carolina had 2 rookie cornerbacks.
Yeah.
It was almost like a stroll through the park for Julio Jones last week.
Yeah.
But Aqib Talib, this is a very vicious man. He'll shoot himself, so he'll go after a wide receiver.
If you got a guy that's so tough, he'll shoot himself. You better not try to challenge this guy in the hallway, Big Z.
So it's not going to be a walk in the park again this week for Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu. So I like Denver in this game because I expect Simeon to play because the way that the backup Lynch played last week when he came in the game, Charlton throwing the 3 touchdowns. Simeon cannot afford to sit because they drafted Lynch for their future.
Yeah.
Simeon is their presence. I expect him to be there and very sharp this week against the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, that's very good, Big C. Now, another couple of games that are really good. Cincinnati, the Bengals, they are actually back on stride. They're 2-2. They're at Dallas 3-1. This game has the makings of a Super Bowl matchup just because of the talent on both sides of the ball. That game Sunday, 4:25 p.m. kickoff Eastern Standard Time. CBS Sports, Jim Nantz, Phil Simms, and Tracy Wolfson. They did the game out here in San Francisco last night. They have the Bengals by 1. I think that Dallas will win that game because of Prescott and also Ezekiel Elliott being a better running back as he gets more carries. And I think Dallas has one of the better offensive lines in football. I think that's a game that Dallas is going to win, probably at least by a field goal, Big C. I wouldn't be surprised if they won by a touchdown. Your thoughts on that game?
Well, Dallas' toughest challenge is going to be on defense.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's offense was kind of lackluster against Miami in that last Thursday night we saw. They only scored a touchdown in the first quarter. But Dallas defense hasn't played that great. They played San Francisco. They shut them down, but everybody else does also.
Yeah.
But Dak Prescott has been the difference in this team. He's been a surprise, but he's been a pleasant surprise. Ezekiel Elliott has brought back promise to the running game, and if he slows down a bit, you got Alfred Morris who can come in. Dez Bryant is still out, so it's receiver by committee, and I think that's what makes Dak Prescott better, Charlton, is that he's not looking for Dez Bryant, is that he's spreading the wealth all over the field to 4 or 5 different receivers.
Yeah. That makes a big difference when it comes to NFL football, Big C. Also, the Buffalo Bills 2-2. They're kind of feeling themselves right now, Big C, but they're at the Los Angeles Rams that are 3-1, and it might be a camouflage 3-1, but I think getting that Pacific Breeze Ocean is a lot healthier for them than drinking all that beer back in St. Louis, Big C, and maybe that's why the Rams are playing better. That game Sunday, a 4:25 kickoff Eastern Time on CBS Sports with Kevin Harlan. He's doing the play-by-play along with Rich Gannon, former Oakland great, and then Scott Kaplan on the sidelines. The Rams are favored by 2. I think the Rams get more than a 2-point win with a team traveling across the country. Big C, your thoughts on Buffalo at the Rams?
Well, Buffalo shut out New England last week, Charlton, so their defense is riding on high.
Yeah.
But their offense only scored 1 touchdown also, and they had the 3 field goals.
Yeah.
The Rams, as you say, 3-1, a surprise team of the NFL right now, starting out the season as well. And, with a journeyman quarterback in Case Keenum.
Yeah.
But the running game to get Todd Gurley on track, and they can cause havoc for anybody.
Yeah.
So playing at home, got the Bills coming in. You got to look at the Rams going 4-1 on the season.
Well, speaking of another West Coast rivalry, Big C, we have the San Diego Chargers, and they've come a long way. They've fallen off a lot since Air Coryell's days. They are 1-3, and they're at the Oakland Raiders 3-1. That game Sunday at 4:25 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS Sports. Tom McCarthy and Adam Archuleta are doing the play-by-play. The Raiders are favored by 3.5. I think the Raiders have played on the road. They've been great. At home, they dropped the game to Atlanta, but Atlanta looks pretty strong, Big C. I think the Raiders can win this game by more than 3, but it's also a game where they can't not revert to the old Oakland Raiders that would give up a lot of touchdowns. I think the defense is playing much better, Big C. The offense is fighting in their stride, and I don't see any room for an upset unless we have a lot of turnovers. I don't see that happening, Big C, because the Chargers aren't all that good. Your thoughts on this game, Big C?
Well, you talked about Air Coryell, even Bobby Ross, who took them to the Super Bowl against the 49ers. They haven't had any prominence down there since those days.
Back in 95,
Yeah, with Stan Humphries at quarterback.
Yeah.
But the Chargers are a team in transition right now. They're struggling. They haven't found that consistency offensively. They lost key players, in a wide receiver and a running back with Ed and Allen. That hurt their offense, took a seat back.
Yeah.
The Raiders, we've seen how prominent they can be. This is a team on the rise. Everybody's expecting them to challenge at least for a playoff position in the Western Division.
Yeah.
The Chargers, they're just hoping to get through the season with at least 500 record.
Well, speaking of that, Big C, this final segment is sponsored by BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org and also CYNN Entertainment when it comes to promotions. Cynthia Evans, she's the best in Northern California. Also want to thank Becca, the business cubit, working on a website for Charlton and Big C Sports. Big C, the final 2 games, we have the New York Giants at 2-2 on the season. They're at the Green Bay Packers, who are 2-1. That game is Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on NBC Sports with the great Al Michaels doing the play-by-play with Chris Collinsworth and Michelle Tafoya. The Packers are favored by 6.5. Now, New York is allowing 21.2 points per game. I just want to get your thoughts on New York going in there and trying to win that game at Green Bay. It looks like a game where Rodgers can finally get on track, Big C, for the Packers. Your thoughts on that game?
Well, Rodgers has played well in his last couple of games, Charlton. He's spreading the wealth. Jordy Nelson seems to be getting his legs back under him. But, the Giants, as we saw last week against Minnesota, you want to get them to the fourth quarter. And if they're not ahead, Eli Manning will make sure that, they never get that way.
Yeah, you're funny.
This is the quarterback who has an NFL record in the NFL. He's led the NFL in interceptions in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And all this attention is going to be put on Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
But nobody's putting the attention on Eli Manning.
Yeah.
If he's your best receiver, why are you only targeting him 5 times in a game?
Yeah.
You got to target your best receiver 10 to 11 times a game, Charlton.
Yeah.
He'll deliver. I mean, that's what Pittsburgh did last week with Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
He had 11 throws. And what happened with Pittsburgh's offense? They got on track against Kansas City. So if you got Odell Beckham, you know he wants the ball. He's your best receiver.
Yeah.
Throw it to him. You have plays designed from the snap that you're going to go there.
Yeah.
You got the cameras going to be on him all night long. So don't let the antics start and take away from the game. But Green Bay should be too much at home with that great pass rush that they have, and Eli Manning's not that mobile in the pocket, Charlton.
Well, Big C, I also want to take this time to say there's been so much talk on the antics of Odell Beckham on the sideline, and he's also, he hit the kicking net, and he snaps his helmet on the ground, and he's having yelling tirades, and I think that's what athletes do. They're emotional. But I think a great offense is happening to women when it comes to this game, and I got to bring it up, Big C, because the kicker for the New York Giants, he had 20 domestic violence calls by his wife, claiming that there was domestic violence in their home. 20. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can't count all that well, Big C, but 20 is not even funny. But hardly any talk on protecting women when domestic violence is happening to the New York Giants football team. They're talking about a guy that hit a kicking net on the sideline, not any mention of a guy who beat up his wife over 20 times, and she made 20 phone calls to law enforcement. I think the media is dropping the ball. I'm kind of ashamed of all of our broadcast brethren that see the elephant in the room, but they don't want to talk about it. Number one, he's Caucasian. They don't want to get a Caucasian guy in trouble, and they really don't care about protecting women because that woman going through that abuse, who's watching out for her, Big C? They're more concerned about Odell Beckham punching a kicking net, Big C, than some guy punching her. I think that's a shame by our network brethren, and I hope that they can bring more attention on ending domestic violence. But here you have a nation more focused on what an African-American receiver is doing than a guy beating up his wife, Big C. I just want to get your thoughts on that before you get into the game.
Well, Charlton, they won't focus one camera on Brown, the punter for the New York Giants, about or make any suggestions about the 20 domestic violence calls or the game suspension that he received.
One game. One.
One game.
One.
You know, look, go do it. Go pull a Tom Brady. Go put sunbathe on the beach. That's basically what they told him.
Yeah.
We're going to let you out one game. That's it. It's okay to have 20 domestic calls versus violence against your wife. That's what the NFL and the New York Giants told him.
Yeah.
Odell Beckham, like I said, it's the stupidity of the broadcast company, Charlton, that is showing Odell Beckham on the sideline. How many players are dressed for every NFL game? 53.
Yeah.
What do fans tune in on television to watch? They tune in to watch the game, not Odell Beckham on the sideline, not even Colin Kaepernick on the sideline.
Yeah.
They tune in to watch the players between the hash marks. But the stupidity of these broadcasts, these producers and directors saying, hey, show them Odell Beckham. He's going to throw a tirade.
Yeah.
And he's going to do it for them. Leave it alone. Show the fans the game. You wonder why the NFL ratings are down 11%, along with the NFL Network broadcasting all the games on one channel?
Yeah.
These are the reasons why. I don't want to watch that. I want to watch the game. As a fan, let me be the intelligent one to make the decision, not that dumb producer who is saying we need to show these antics on the sideline.
I agree with the Big C. In the final game, we'll get on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're 1-3. They're at the Carolina Panthers, also 1-3. I think they're suffering from the Super Bowl hangover. That game is Monday night on ABC Sports, actually ESPN. It's an 8:30 Eastern Standard Time kickoff, Big C. Sean McDonough, John Gruden, and Lisa Salters doing that game. There's really no line as of this time, but that's a game where both teams have to get on track. Two great quarterbacks in the making. I think that we have some injuries going on with the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton. Just want to get your thoughts on Tampa and Carolina on Monday Night Football, Big C.
Well, this is a must-win for both organizations. They got the hangover from the Super Bowl in Carolina, but also Cam Newton has been injured. I think it would be smart for the organization to sit him down one game with the concussion protocol. Everyone keeps saying he doesn't have a concussion, but he's human. He's taken a lot of unnecessary hits.
Yeah.
And there has been a few penalties, but too many hits on a quarterback. He's just a quarterback. He's not a tight end. He's not a running back. He's a quarterback, regardless of his size. Tampa Bay, they said they would have great things offensively under Dirk Cutter this year. The new coach, after they got rid of Lovie Smith. His offense has been kind of lackluster since Lovie Smith has left. And he's now at the University of Illinois. So, Tampa, Dirk Cutter is going to have to find a way to be a better coach.
Yeah.
Because he has not found a way to motivate his players. He has not found a way to get the ball into the end zone consistently. And Jameis Winston has gotten worse this year after a great rookie season.
Well, Big C, I love hearing you talk. I love talking about sports. And I do know that this week is a great game going on in baseball, no matter what game you're watching. Baseball, the playoffs are great. We have great things happening in the world of NFL football. We have the WNBA going. NHL is starting for hockey in the preseason as well. But I also want to say, as we do in every show, keep our women safe. There's no room for domestic violence. If you see any woman in trouble, any woman being hit or abused, just call 911. Let's keep our women safe. And if we don't do it as men and broadcasters, then who's going to do it, Big C? That's why I want my brethren to step up and start focusing on the guys that do wrong. Call them out. We got to tell them there's no excuse for domestic violence. And every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide, follow Charlton and Big C Sports. We are the hottest show in the universe, voted #1 by Big C and his good old boys down south, Big C. We hope that no hanging chads. You can find us every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide on Charlton and Big C Sports. And as we always tell you, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.